Hi, I'm Mark Frost, a RUPS Growth Partnership Manager, and you're listening to the For the Founders podcast. This series includes discussion-based interviews with industry leaders from startup and scale-up companies. With digital technology vastly improving and changing the landscape, For the Founders aims to uncover the secrets and insights into how digital technology is impacting business growth. This is our Tech for Good event, part of For the Founders. So I'm Mark Frost, Chief Partner Evangelist at part of Annapurna RUPS, and just a little bit of a backstory into Annapurna RUPS. We're on a mission to support predominantly European scale and startup organizations overcome ever-evolving pressures and challenges they face when looking to grow. We successfully help build teams through our talent partner models and therefore envisage our relationships as extensions of their business. And for the founders, feel like a natural networking progression towards obviously showcasing some of these partnerships and connecting with amazing speakers like we have today, the three speakers, and looking to share their kind of insights and wisdoms to a wider tech community. All the speakers here today have involvement in the Tech for Good space, which is fantastic, and really excited to hear what they obviously have to share. So it'd be great just as a very, very quick introduction from all the speakers today before we kick off. In no particular order, Philipp, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Philipp, founder and CEO of FinMarie Hearing Technologies, and we basically tackle hearing loss. We're building a hearing well-being platform that allows our consumer electronic partners to build in hearing well-being features into their products, from hearing testing, compensating for hearing loss, but also protecting against hearing loss happening or hearing damage happening in the first place.
Leitha?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for inviting us here. So our impact is really specifically in diversity and inclusion. FinMarie is focused on helping women to get into financial security. So, for example, many women tend to save, but they don't invest. They end up, end of life with much less to retire on, and often retirement insecurity. So the thing that we address is specifically in that area with hopefully scalable technology.
Thank you. And Ruth?
Hi, Mark. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I'm Ruth. I'm the founder of ForTomorrow. It's a non-profit organization that enables everyone to buy away emission rights out of the compliance market and therefore force the European industry to emit less CO2. And on the other hand, we also plant new forests in Europe to take CO2 out of the air.
Brilliant. Thank you. All superb users of technology. And I feel like a good starting point for this conversation would be, and this can be open for everyone, but why did you start a business in the Tech for Good space? What did the passions come from? And obviously we've got two female leaders here as well. So, perhaps you guys could kind of start with this as, did you feel particularly challenged as a female founders in that space? But, open for everyone with it, kind of this question.
Well, I would just say that, when we started FinMarie, it was truly based on what we were seeing around us, which was women who were, absolutely adept at running their households and, their household finances, but they didn't take that next step into things like investment, and they didn't even want to talk about things like investment and kind of the advanced areas of financial management. So we started a nonprofit first, and the thing that we saw was there was a real hunger for this, and when people actually did start talking and did get into the idea, then it seemed like a natural flow into creating a business around it.
Yeah, Lisa, really exciting that you also started with a nonprofit. So I started to work first for profit companies in the compliance market in emission trading, and then later for nonprofit in the voluntary market. But there, all the emission reduction is done in the global south, and we often got the question, why can't we reduce CO2 emissions here in Europe? Because here in Europe, it's much more important, because here is the high emission, not in countries like Nigeria or in the global south. So that's why I wanted to make this compliance market available for everyone to just buy away the emission rights and really force the industry to produce more climate friendly. And for me, I think what was a bit harder as a female founder is that you are underestimated a lot of times. So I talked about my professional background and about my physics thesis, um, to not get reduced to looks, because you also get this comment that you only got something because of your looks. I think that's something, I don't know if any male founders have heard something like that as well. Would be curious. But that's something that you still hear as a woman in business and as a woman founder, and it just it's you need a good self-esteem for that.
Sure. Thank you. And Ruth, being involved in the climate space, do you find yourself speaking a lot at kind of events to kind of a wider audience?
Yeah, I do that quite frequently, and I think it's really important that we speak about climate change and that we also get together all stakeholders. So I also talked at a panel where there were a lot of industry leaders, so a lot of people working for the steel companies, for example, and that's where we buy the emission rights from. So we make it more expensive for them. But they also said they actually like it because they can already produce a steel in a green way, but it's just really costly. And if nobody wants to pay the price, they're just not doing that. They are for-profit companies, so they do what makes the most profit. And what we are doing is that we make the green steel more profitable than the gray steel. So that's a win-win for everyone.
Absolutely. Win for the planet, win for everybody. And Philipp, same question to yourself. Why did you start your business in the tech for good space around kind of hearing? What's the story there?
I came maybe from the other side. I was originally mechanical engineering background in academia in the innovation space, then working for an early stage VC company builder. And at that time, there were a lot of messenger apps and the shirt cleaning delivery service. And I was really attracted by doing something actually purposeful and tackling one of the senses. And back in the time, like we started 8 years ago, nobody wanted to touch hearing loss as a topic. It was really stigmatized, and going into this not crowded space where there were maybe old industry players, but then bringing a topic like that really to the mass market and turning consumer electronics that are a big driver of hearing loss. Like if you're sometimes sitting in a subway and you can listen on the headphones of your neighbor, and WHO is predicting something like 25% of people will have hearing loss by 2050 if it continues like this. So basically tackling with technology and then leveraging these consumer electronic companies from turning them from being part of the problem and turning them to be a solution. I think that was really attractive. And at the same time, my father was around 70, and so I had my first-hand experience how hard it is to get somebody to take action there. So I think seeing what was happening back then in the VC space, doing something purposeful, but I think since then it has evolved in a positive direction, that there's way more impact topics being funded, and I think it's becoming a more necessity to actually do business and attract good talent.
And one thing that interests me with that is, how do you not convince, but how do you convey that messaging to perhaps a manufacturer, say someone like Sony or manufacturers of audio goods, that your solution, I guess, presents a kind of fits in the kind of that sexy model of a solution?
I think normally digital health solutions have the challenge of that users don't want to pay out of their own pocket, and it needs to be reimbursed through the health system. I think in audio, there's a huge market. People are spending hundreds of euros on headphones, on stereo systems, and so on. And people enjoy the quality of listening to music well. So for us, it was easy to help the consumer electronics manufacturers to make their products more attractive, also make them more compliant with purpose. And so finding monetization through that way. And I think them, like, for example, bringing out the brilliance in headphones and making sure that this whole chain from recording audio to then listening to it is not blocked by myself. And we often bring this example from vision. If you're buying a 4K television, if you go to a gallery to look at art, of course, you're putting on your glasses and the same thing should be true for audio. And so just tailoring and optimizing a product to you, basically this personalization trend fits in it. And so I think we can position it in a very attractive way also for the consumer electronic companies, and it has the good effect that people listen less loud, and that affects our diminished.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Certainly. No, definitely. And something I thought Ruth kind of mentioned in a kind of when she first spoke was around the steel companies thinking more around kind of profit, and that kind of leads me into what do you feel as organizations having kind of a purpose? You all seem purpose-led organizations over profit brings to an organization. Would be a great question. Perhaps Leitha, you could give some examples.
Yeah, I know, Mark. We've recently talked about how that you can bring people into your company with your passion, right? Like so being purpose driven means that you have, I think, an easier time really bringing in talent, bringing in support for your organization, but also I think there is a trend now for larger organizations, larger companies, larger VCs, for example, to focus on impact and purpose because they're getting that pressure from their stakeholders. So there's now, I think, an opportunity in market for impact-oriented businesses to test out ideas in market, to show that people really do care about what it is that you're producing, whether that's audio health or better steel, for example. People care about these topics, and then you become, I guess, ultimately really valuable to larger companies that would like to focus on this, but haven't been able to essentially test that out and market themselves for a variety of reasons. So I think smaller companies like ours tend to be like the guinea pigs in market in this way.
And Ruth, same question to yourself.
Yeah, I agree with what Leitha said, and I think the greatest benefit that it brings is trust, because if you're a purpose-driven or non-profit company, people can really trust the why that you have. So for us, for example, it's climate protection, and that's always the first goal. And that's something that also leads the way forward, and people can trust that we always make decision based on this goal and not on what makes the most profit. So, for example, we would never take an oil ad, even if we would get paid a lot for it. But it doesn't fit with our purpose. So we would never do such a thing. And I think that's a great benefit that we give people, that they can really trust if they work for us, then they really work for climate protection and not for making profits.
And do you see that kind of resonates through your kind of culture of people that want to work for you? You kind of, have you seen different types of people attracted to your organization because of the kind of the purpose approach?
Yeah, so we get a lot of voluntary support, which is really, really great. We get great people there with a lot of knowledge helping us, just because they also believe in our purpose. So they want to bring climate protection forward. And that's something I think we wouldn't have gotten if we are not a nonprofit. And also from companies as a nonprofit, you get a lot of support. So like ad grants, for example, that you can use. And that's also a huge benefit.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Philipp, I'm going to pose you a technology question, as obviously as you're involved in a leading technology. So, we're seeing technology develop and advance so quickly. So, things such as smart automation and AI, what advantages in technology are you seeing in the kind of the market and your background that could positively impact, products and services going forward, perhaps through your product or other areas?
I think on the one hand, also strongly pushed through the pandemic, audio consumption has massively increased. For example, the average American now listens to 8 hours of digital audio per day, from Zoom calls to Spotify to Netflix. And that is, on the one hand, contributing to the danger of overexposing, but it also allows us to optimize and help people in those services. It's definitely one. Then I think digital technology lends to personalization. Before, like 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible. Then definitely on the technology side, the data that we can use to improve our fitting and learn from those patterns, I think it's very interesting. So a lot of these technologies and trends are contributing. I think more on the, we lately see also this new understanding of accessibility, which is way more about inclusion and making products more usable and accessible. Also, if you don't have necessarily that disability that is catered by that accessibility feature, but rather really products that are more thought through for different people. We see that popping up not only on the technology side, but I think last year's Oscars had 3 movies around accessibility. So really these social trends, but also technological trends are helping a lot.
Super, brilliant. Anyone else? Any insights on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would just echo what Philipp said, but extend that because I think there is more access these days for builders, actually. So in the past, something that would have been very niche would have been a very small audience. You can begin to address that audience, and you can actually prove that the market was much larger than anybody anticipated. And I think we have much more access to do this through the available mobile technologies, through no code, through the access to tooling and to widespread fast internet access. This is so there's a lot that's being developed, for example, for mobile devices in places that really skipped over a lot of the kind of desktop computing revolutions. So you see a lot of really interesting, for example, fintech access that's happening in the African nations that is really based on like phones that aren't even necessarily smartphones. So I think that the more access that people have to building the tools, the more they're going to build tools that are really going to speak to them and their individual problems that might have been overlooked by larger companies that used to have kind of control of the resources.
Absolutely. Thank you. And what I'm thinking is, do you believe that having a tech for good stance, which all your organizations do you think that makes obtaining funding kind of easier or more desirable to prospective VCs kind of moving forward? If we entered a period where that's a desirable trait to have as an organization? Ruth, any kind of insights on that?
Yeah, actually, since I founded a nonprofit, I thought funding would be not an applicable topic for me. But then actually, we got also approached by investors, which took me by surprise because I didn't thought that it would be interesting to invest in a nonprofit. And we also got a grant from some Berlin funding, which is really nice as well. But otherwise, this topic of investors and VCs, and that's something that we leave out. We want to grow organically.
Sure, brilliant. And Leitha?
Yeah, I mean, investors are people too, and of course, they also want to make an impact on the world in many cases. So I think, yeah, finding the right investor fit might be in some cases easier for a company that can really show that they have purpose and that really show that they are mission driven. Because one, it shows that your team really is going to have the grit to move forward with the project that you're building. I mean, you're not phoning it in. you really believe in it yourself, and that kind of passion for your own product, I think, is really attractive to the people who want to get on board with you, and that includes, of course, the people who are backing you from a support and money standpoint.
And Philipp, your kind of insights on that from an investment perspective?
I think we've seen a transition in the last years. I think more in the early days, it was resonating a lot with family offices, which were way more long-term oriented and purpose-driven. And I think this has moved more to classical VCs as well over the last 3, 4, 5 years. So definitely a change there to the good.
Brilliant, brilliant. And how do you engage with your kind of wider stakeholder community? Is there anything that they want from you that you kind of don't already do? Do you look to align with kind of market trends or look to kind of break the trends? There's a couple of questions in there, I guess.
Towards the stakeholders, I think there are multiple levels we interact with. For example, we've worked with Barmer, Germany's largest health insurance, in going to festivals and doing education about noise-induced hearing loss, or on the other end, working with standard bodies on safety and accessibility standards. So really also more on the long term influencing that things are moving to more accessible and safe products, or behavior on the actual user side. And I know teenagers at festivals not being aware of what long-lasting damage that they're doing. So very different, broader stakeholders that we're interacting with.
Sure. And do you identify with kind of market trends within the audio space, or do you look to kind of break them? I guess that kind of startup innovation mentality. What's your approach there?
I think it's definitely easier if you work with the trends. As I said, digitalization, audio consumption, accessibility being more on the radar. So really just helping to using that energy, or that catching that wave of these trends is definitely easier than trying to force against it.
Absolutely. I've just had a question come in, and this one's posed for you, Ruth. As pressures for environmental challenges mount, which we're seeing across the board, what are your current commitments to sustainability as an organization?
Yeah, I was ForTomorrow, our business model is obviously that we buy away as many emission rights as we can to reduce CO2 emissions in Europe as fast as possible, and to really transform the European economy to become climate neutral. And on the other hand, we are planting new forests to remove CO2 from the air. That was also something that we got through a stakeholder request. In the beginning, we started out really lean, so we did a lot of interviews. And first, we wanted only to start with buying away emission rights, and people liked the idea; they found it great. But they also said that in the long term, we need to reduce the amount of CO2 already in the air, and that's totally true. To stop global warming, we need to reduce the amount of CO2 that we already have in the air for the long term. I mean, short term, the focus is on CO2 reduction, of course, but long term, we also need to get CO2 out of the air. And that was how this tree planting came into the business model. But what we are also focusing on are new trends where we could have a larger impact, so that we work together with corporations. So, for example, in Germany, since the beginning of this year, if you are a car owner of an electric vehicle, you can get a certain quota, and then you can get that through a platform which bundles it and sells it off to the mineral oil companies, because they have to buy it. It's by law. They have to buy these quotas, and then you get some money. But it's basically money that you get from the mineral oil companies. And a lot of people, they buy an electric vehicle because they want to get rid of this mineral oil companies, and they don't want to have anything to do with them. So then it's kind of weird to get money from them. So what we offer now is that they can immediately donate this money to us, and then we go around and buy away emission rights from the mineral oil company with this money, forcing them to reduce even more CO2. And that's a really great cooperation that works really well.
Brilliant. So you're making it very easy for organizations to take those steps. And how are you seeing that the forest reforestation approach is kind of working? Is that a great method?
Yeah, so reforestation is a lot about the policies that are there in the country. So in the beginning, we also thought about doing the reforestation in countries like Brazil. But if you have a government that doesn't care about nature, then you just don't have enough forests. to do a meaningful impact there. So that's why we decided to do that in Europe and especially in Germany, because in Germany the laws are quite strict for forests. So what we are doing now is we plant forests on degraded land, for example, on an old mining area. And once this land is a forest, it's protected by law, and this forest has to be there forever. So even if it's burned down, then it has to be replanted. Or if something happens like the Tesla factory in Brandenburg, where a lot of wood needed to be cut, then they have to replant in another area. So the law is designed in a way that the amount of forest in Germany can only grow. And that's something where you can then have a really meaningful impact. Because you are sure that you grow the total amount of forest in the country.
Thank you. Thank you. And Leitha, I'm going to pose this one to you. How have your employees and future employees for that Matz's mindset kind of shifted over the 24 months, kind of retention versus attraction?
Yeah, so we've actually been doing more building of the company during this this last, I guess, 24 months, and I think that initially, of course, people had thoughts about co-location, but you know, being remote certainly makes a lot of sense now, and actually, I think there's an argument to be made for environmental impact there as well. The way that we are creating opportunities to work and to communicate with each other, and the ability that we have to reduce, you know, useless travel and useless, you know, kind of a lot of the waste that we had taken for granted before, I think is just a win for everybody. It's a win for accessibility. It's a win for reduction of excess, and it's a win for efficiency. I mean, one of the things that we've heard is that when you have more flexibility in your work style and more flexibility in your setup, you accommodate people who, you know, were not fitting into the tight boxes of previous work styles. So, you know, people who need to pick up their kids, you give opportunity for them to create a wonderful impact in your organization. It just give them the flexibility to do these things. So.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And I kind of pose the same question to yourself, kind of Philipp, for people that you have working for you. Do you have a hybrid setup or remote? What's the approach there?
Yeah, we're experimenting still. I think like a lot of companies, finding the right balance. I think really sometimes being in a room with somebody, sharing a meal, having a very deep conversation, this cannot as easily be done by calls. But sitting every day beside somebody on your desk and looking in your computer, that doesn't make sense. So really experimenting with like once a quarter, having 2 weeks where people are really there to plan together, but also have more social events, things like that. But it's not easy. Like some people want it this way, others the other way. So a lot of experimentation still to be done. And we also are really unlucky. We have some initiatives and then COVID waves are countering our so it's a little bit unplannable and still finding the right balance there. But on the customer side, we've shown that remote selling is actually possible just virtually. A lot of our customers are sitting in Asia and in the US. We have colleagues that are actually in those regions and handling this remotely, and which surprisingly worked well. Sometimes hard with actually hardware demos, but sending devices and things like that have helped us in these times to find new ways to do this. But we're still learning and optimizing there.
Absolutely, and you know, this I assume this is you know, allowed you to attract kind of a larger talent pool as such.
Definitely, I mean, it's also more becoming a request that people have. We've always had quite good remote working policies, but now it's really more a necessity these days. And yeah, so that makes it how to only hire people completely remotely, how often should you still see somebody face to face, But definitely it has increased the pool, but also it has shifted the expectations of people. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Leitha, am I aware that FinMarie are working on an app at the moment? What does that kind of look like?
Yeah. Actually, well, so one of the things that we have found is that, for example, if you sit down with somebody for an hour and a half and you have a conversation with them, then you can get across everything that you need to give to them, and you can develop the trust, and you can develop the confidence in that person to move forward. But understanding that that is not reasonable in many cases, that's inaccessible in some cases, and it's quite expensive. How do you digitize that? So that's our challenge, and what combination of education, what combination of support, maybe you need just a 15-minute check-in here, like how do you do this and move forward? So yeah, we're going to launch an app, and obviously we're experimenting with this, because I think this is one of those greater challenges. How do you scale something that is so personal?
Do you feel an element of responsibility around kind of how technology now kind of governs and impacts our society, I guess both in positive and negative light?
Yeah, I think the huge impact is that you can reach a lot more people now through technology. That's also what we have seen with Greta Thunberg, for example. She is known all over the world, I would say now, and this is due to social media, due to the technology where everybody can look things up and learn about things. And that's something that's really, really useful for climate protection. I mean, this climate issue is there since a long time already, and the wave is coming really now with a lot of people spreading the information, because it's something that we don't feel in everyday life. I mean, we see that the temperatures are higher than normal in spring and winter and summer. But we don't feel the effects immediately of releasing CO2, and therefore it's so important that that this information is spread. What I also see is with technology, there's a lot of this blockchain Web3 technology coming up now, also in the climate space. I hope it will help us. I'm still a bit skeptical, especially because of the energy consumption. So just to put blockchain somewhere isn't going to make it better if it has no use. So I'm a bit skeptical if it's only used for marketing purposes, but I guess in some sense it can really help if we kind of democratize and get more transparency in there because of blockchain.
Absolutely. And when we're seeing in the market now, being a recruitment organization ourselves, that there's a huge talent challenge going on, and all your organizations are kind of going on growth journeys. Do you find it's easier to hire people kind of post-pandemic because you do have a positive purpose?
Yeah, I was really surprised by the great applications that we got from people with a lot of work experience already, and was actually higher positions already, and wanting to step down to work for climate protection, because during the pandemic, I guess a lot of people had some time to reflect on what's really important for life, what they really want to spend their work time on. And quite some people wanted to take a job with a purpose, and so that's something where the pandemic actually benefited companies with a purpose, I think. But of course, you need to be flexible, and that's what we talked about. So we also have a hybrid policy, and we have people working remote for us, and it works really well. Yeah.
Brilliant. Leitha, same question for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably the same answer. Yeah, the people that come to us, like I've heard people having like hiring challenges, or it's like, oh, I can't find development, or I can't find, I can't find people who are willing to come in from their expensive jobs. But I'm not seeing that. Like people are willing to take on something that they really believe in and that they want to wake up and work on this mission. It's I don't know if it's a trend only now, but I think Ruth is absolutely right. People have had a few moments to kind of pause, maybe reset their lives a little bit, maybe think about what they want in the world, and I think that benefits the mission driven, the impact organizations, the right now I'm actually working from Impact Hub here in Berlin, which the entire building is right now undergoing construction, and I think it's filling up with these impact organizations, and the reason is because everybody is really passionate about doing good in the world, and it's great to have that community and to be surrounded by so many people who are really talented and could work, of course, big corporate jobs, but have chosen a different path.
Yeah, I do feel that we are in this pivotal period, and we see it a lot, that there's so many organizations within, particularly as you mentioned, the Berlin space, which are startups with positive purposes in the world and using technology for the better purpose. And this was one of the reasons behind for the founders, is around kind of sharing these positive messages that organizations are doing to kind of a wider community as well, and kind of sharing those insights for sure. And Philipp, just going back to that question as well around kind of talent for yourself, have you seen things develop over the kind of the post-pandemic period?
I mean, I think definitely was this pause and time for reflection. I think on one hand help people to reflect on what purpose do I want to do with my work life. But I think it also has led to generally reconsidering, where do I want to live? Do I want to travel? So it also had positive effects on being able to attract great talent, but also definitely a lot of movement in the market, which we need to juggle with. So definitely, created a lot of momentum.
Yeah, some volatility, but as people are kind of finding themselves. But I guess an element of stickiness, right? Once you kind of commit to a purpose, you want to kind of see that mission develop and evolve. So it's an exciting kind of space to be in. And I think that's kind of a good way to kind of wrap up from the event. Thank you for listening and being part of For the Founders community. Make sure to follow me on LinkedIn and visit our website to keep up to date with our live events and latest interviews.